Due to copyright, I can't publish many audiobooks on YouTube. At our audiobook novel service, we offer access to over 300 full novels from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, Wuxia, and more, all in high-quality audio format. Each novel is available with a one-time payment only. No subscriptions, no monthly payment, and no ads. Payments via PayPal or Ko-fi. To browse the full list of available novels, message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out our full catalog on Discord. Chapter 101, Guillotine. The next morning, a stage was set up in the middle of North Pine Town, making the townspeople curious about what it was meant for. Is there a performance today? I don't think so. I haven't heard of a troupe visiting the town. House Silversword must have set this stage to announce something important. While the townspeople were curiously chatting between themselves, a few warriors suddenly appeared carrying something covered by a cloth. Look! They are coming! What's that thing? I have no idea. Everyone watched as the warriors set up the item on the stage. When the warriors removed the cloth, a guillotine was revealed, shocking everyone to their core. Who is going to be executed today? More and more townspeople gathered at the venue when news spread that there would be a public execution. An hour later, hundreds of people had already gathered at the site, waiting for the execution to begin. At this moment, more warriors appeared and they were dragging a few people whose hands were chained. The townspeople were curious to know the identities of these individuals, but their faces were covered by a cloth, making it impossible for everyone to guess who they were. It's Lord Alaric, someone exclaimed. Everyone turned their head when they heard this. Alaric calmly walked towards the stage under the heated gazes of the crowd. The mission is still set at normal, so I need to be careful. To ensure a smooth process, Alaric invited William to watch the execution. With the old man around, he could rest assured that no accident would occur. Upon stepping foot on the stage, Alaric raised his hand, signaling to the audience to keep quiet. Everyone, I have an important announcement to make. Alaric scanned the crowd with a solemn look. Today, we will be executing the criminals who had attempted to poison the Baron. When the townspeople heard his words, they almost flew into rage. Lucas was their lord, an important symbol of North Pine Town. Everyone respected him for he was a great leader who had never oppressed the poor. They would never forgive those who would attempt to take his life. Alaric sent a signal to the warriors to remove the cloth that covered the criminals' faces. As soon as their faces were revealed, the townspeople immediately rained curses at them. Many even started throwing stones and other objects at the criminals. Everyone was furious. The first person sent to the guillotine was Pamela. Her face was covered in bruises and there were all sorts of wounds on her body, but no one felt pity for her. It looked like she wanted to say something, but because of the bruises on her face, she could only emit unintelligible words. Alaric announced her crimes as the warriors placed her on the guillotine. After announcing her crimes, Alaric nodded at the executioner. Swoosh! The guillotine cleanly chopped off Pamela's head, sending it rolling onto the stage. Everyone cheered upon witnessing her death. Meanwhile, a warrior came to dispose of her corpse, and another one grabbed her fallen head. In the next moment, the second criminal was sent to the guillotine. It was one of Charles's subordinates. Alaric stated his crimes before he sent a signal to the executioner. Swoosh! A few more criminals were beheaded. Some of them pleaded for mercy, but no one listened. There was also someone who tried to escape, but he was cut down in half by Galliner, who was at the scene. Soon only 2 criminals remained. The next person is Gerard. Alaric announced the man's crimes, which were even worse than the criminals who died before him. Alaric glanced deeply at Gerard. This man was an elite knight, so he had Galliner pin him down on the guillotine to ensure that he wouldn't escape. Surprisingly, Gerard didn't take any action. He just obediently laid down on the guillotine without saying a word. After announcing his crimes, Alaric asked him, "Do you have any last words?" Gerard lifted his head and muttered, "Please forgive me, Aru." Alaric sighed. This man was unlucky. He was a loyal subordinate, but he followed the wrong lord. Alaric sent a signal to the executioner. Swoosh! Gerard didn't activate his mana, so the blade cleanly cut off his head. Now only one criminal remained. For some reason, the townspeople felt that this person looked strangely familiar. The last person is the main culprit behind this incident. Please don't be surprised, everyone. This is Charles Silversword. Because of his greed, he plotted to poison the Baron. As soon as they heard this name, the audience was stunned. They even thought that there was something wrong with their ears. However, when Galliner grabbed his hair, they saw his face. It's indeed Sir Charles. How could this be? I thought he was a good man. It turns out he was a devil. Kill him. Kill. Everyone felt betrayed. Wait, Charles shouted while looking at Alaric. Galliner immediately pushed his shoulder, forcing him to kneel. Alaric raised his hand to silence the furious crowd. Speak, he uttered coldly. Charles knew that his death was imminent, so he no longer bothered to conceal his true face. The kind face that he always had was now filled with loathing and insanity. Don't regret this, Alaric. You don't know anything. The town may look peaceful on the surface, but this place will soon be engulfed in flames. Ha ha ha. He laughed contemptuously. The people at the capital are getting restless with the Emperor's declining health. Soon, there will be a great war and North Pinetown will be forced to participate. Ha ha ha. I will watch you guys suffer and I will wait for you in hell. Charles was like a deranged beast as he uttered those words. Alaric's expression darkened. How does he know about this? Did one of the princes approach him already? He realized that the two princes might have already started gathering their forces in preparation for the Emperor's passing. With a cold look on his face, Alaric nodded to Galliner. The latter understood his intentions and grabbed Charles by the neck. He then pinned Charles to the guillotine. Swoosh! Under. Mission complete. Rewards, 500 battle points, 30 EXP, 30 stat points, random trait card X1. Under. Chapter 102, New Trait. Do you want to use the random trait card? Yes. No. He clicked no and opened his character profile. Alaric Silversword, Knight, EXP. 500/500. Cannot receive more EXP before advancement. Potential, B. Traits. Horseback riding, C. Swordsmanship, SSS. Close combat, C. Archery, F. Hunting, E. Tracking, E. Sixth sense, F. Strength, 100. Stamina, 40+. Agility, 100. Vitality, 27+. Endurance, 42+. Mana, 48. Battle points, 4280. Stat points, 64. Requirements for the next advancement, 500 EXP, 100 in all attributes, and 5,000 battle points. He then closed the cyan screen and stared at Charles's decapitated head with a complicated look on his face. He had finally disposed of the man who would have caused the downfall of the household. However, he felt no joy. On the contrary, Alaric felt uncomfortable. The last words that Charles had spoken were still lingering in his mind, repeating over and over like a broken cassette tape. There are still more things to do. Alaric didn't stay for long after the criminals were beheaded. He gave a closing speech and returned to the estate. Upon returning home, he didn't immediately go find his father. He felt that it was better to give the Baron some time to be alone. Inside his room, Alaric opened the cyan screen. Do you want to use the random trait card? Yes. No. This time he clicked yes. You have awakened the F-rank monster affinity trait. Huh, what's this? Monster affinity. How does this work? Alaric furrowed his eyebrows. From the name, it sounded like it had something to do with monsters. I'll test it out next time. He closed the cyan screen and headed to the bathroom to remove the bloody smell on his body. On the 17th of January, in the year 209 of the Estanian calendar, the Baron's birthday celebration proceeded as scheduled despite the unexpected events that happened recently. North Pinetown was in an unusual mood. Some people were happy, while others were feeling unsettled because of what had happened during the public execution. There were a lot of visitors who came to join the Baron's birthday celebration, so the streets of the town were bustling with activity. At this moment, droves of carriages entered House Silversword's estate, carrying noble dignitaries from neighboring cities and towns. One of these carriages carried the representatives sent by House Paxley. "Maris, how do I look?" Hershey asked her personal maidservant as she adjusted her dress. Maris smiled lightly at her and helped her adjust her clothes. "My lady, you already look perfect. I'm sure all those young men and warriors will be captivated by your beauty." Hearing this, Hershey shook her head and smiled as she thought of that familiar face. "I don't care about any of those men." Maris chuckled at her words. She knew what her lady was talking about, for she was aware that Hershey had already devoted herself to one man. While they were chatting, the voice of the coachman suddenly drifted into their ears. "My lady, I apologize for disturbing your conversation, but this is the furthest I can take you." "All right," Hershey responded. "My lady." The female knight bowed deeply to her and extended her right arm for Hershey to grab onto. Hershey grabbed her hand as she stepped down the carriage. Meanwhile, her maidservant, Maris, lifted her dress to prevent Hershey from stepping on it. Upon stepping foot on the cobbled pavement, Hershey nodded to Cassandra. "Thank you, Dame Cassandra." The female knight lowered her head. "It's my pleasure to serve you, my lady." Maris dusted off the snow on Hershey's dress before she rose to her feet. "My lady, there are so many guests. I feel nervous," she whispered while she discreetly observed the noble dignitaries coming out of the carriages. Hershey lightly turned her head and squeezed Maris's hand. "Just relax and don't mind them." Maris nodded her head meekly. The trio headed to the venue, a special mansion meant for such celebrations. When they arrived, the place was already filled with people. The sounds of the musical instruments and the chattering of the crowd resonated in their ears. This combination of sounds created a unique atmosphere that made them feel the essence of the celebration. Hershey's arrival sparked the interest of many young nobles. Her beauty, her grace, and her temperament attracted these proud men. Some of them tried to strike a conversation with her, but Hershey only replied politely, and she didn't even try to prolong the conversation. Seeing that she had no interest in them, no one approached her anymore. They just stared at her and admired her beauty from a distance. "Lady Hershey is truly beautiful, but I heard that she will be engaged to someone." "What a pity," someone mumbled with a hint of regret. "Your news is outdated. I heard that she will be engaged to Lord Alaric." "Well, only Lord Alaric deserves a woman like her." The guests discussed eagerly as they watched Hershey step into the hall. Suddenly, the main character of today's event appeared. It was Lucas Silversword, dressed in his custom-made suit emblazoned with a golden insignia of House Silversword. His arrival silenced the crowd for a moment. His dignified look and his commanding presence awed the audience. As he went down the staircase from the second floor, Lucas's face remained stoic. Lucas stopped midway and scanned everyone's faces. His piercing gaze made the guests unconsciously adjust their posture. Seeing that he had gathered their attention, Lucas opened his mouth. "Good day, everyone. Thank you for coming to my humble estate to join my birthday celebration. I have prepared." His voice echoed through the banquet hall. "Please enjoy your stay here." Clap, clap, clap. The audience gave him a round of applause after his short speech. "Where is he?" Hershey looked around the hall, searching for that familiar figure. Just then, she suddenly heard Maris gasping in surprise behind her. She raised her eyebrows and turned around. What happened? In front of her was the very man she was looking for. "How are you, my lady?" Chapter 103, Gift-Giving Ceremony. "My lord!" Hershey exclaimed in surprise and joy. She suppressed her excitement and responded. "I have been well. How about you, my lord? I heard about what happened recently. I was worried about you." Alaric smiled at her. "I'm all right." Truthfully, he was still affected by his uncle's words, but he didn't want her to be needlessly worried. "I'm glad that you're all right." The two talked about other matters, and their conversation flowed smoothly as if they had been waiting for this exact moment. Suddenly, the two noticed a group of people approaching them. Alaric raised an eyebrow when he saw these people. "My lord, my lady," the person leading the group respectfully greeted before everyone followed suit. Hershey politely smiled at them, while Alaric wore a strange look. "How have you been, Lord Dillon?" Dillon forced a smile. "Thank you for asking, my lord. I have been well, but I'm not feeling good these past few days after I heard that my brother has offended you." Upon saying this, he grabbed the chubby man behind him while keeping his eyes on Alaric. "I brought my brother here with me to formally apologize for what he had done. I hope you can forgive him for his terrible behavior. I have already punished him, but I feel that it is not enough." Dillon was really afraid that Alaric would come to Redunia to seek revenge. He had heard about what happened to Liam Paxley in Ryvad. The events that happened that day made the neighboring cities and towns take notice of Alaric. Alaric glanced at RYK's fat face, which had a bruise on the left side. He would have forgotten about his encounter with RYK in Turtle Fort if they hadn't come to visit. "That was just a minor issue, Lord Dillon. Let's forget about it and move on." Alaric turned his head back to Dillon. This man would one day become a powerful warrior. Alaric didn't mind doing him this small favor. Dillon was relieved to hear that. "Thank you for your magnanimity, my lord." He then glared at his brother and said, "What are you waiting for? Go and thank Lord Alaric." RYK didn't dare go against Dillon. "Thank you, Lord Alaric." He lowered his head. Alaric waved his hand. "Just don't do it again," he uttered with a stern look. If it weren't for Dillon's sake, he would have already beaten up this guy. Alaric and Dillon exchanged a few more words before the latter excused himself. In the next few hours more guests arrived, making the banquet hall more festive and noisy. Alaric had to leave Hershey for a while to help his father entertain the guests. After lunch, the most exciting part of the celebration began. It was the gift-giving ceremony. Lucas sat on the main seat, waiting for the guests to hand over their gifts. One by one, each representative stepped forward to give their gifts. "Happy birthday, Lord Lucas. I am Dillon Heinrich of House Heinrich. I bring you this oceanic jade bracelet which symbolizes stability." Dillon presented an aquamarine jade bracelet to Lucas. As soon as this item was revealed, the crowd gasped in shock. This jade was unavailable in the north since its main material could only be found in the southern section of the empire. It was a rare jade worth over 1,000 gold coins. "Thank you." Lucas seemed to be pleased with the gift. The next person came up to give his gift. Although it was also a valuable item, it wasn't as rare as the oceanic jade bracelet. A few more people came up, but no gift exceeded the value offered by House Heinrich. At this moment, the representative sent by the city lord of Vale presented his gift. "My lord, I came here under the city lord's command to give you 50 tons of grain, 50 tons of corn, 50 tons of potato, and 50 tons of wheat." The crowd clapped their hands and cheered when they heard his words. During the winter when food was scarce, that many resources could already feed more than 1,000 people for 2 months. Lucas nodded at the representative of the city lord. "Please convey my thanks to the city lord." "Yes, my lord." The man nodded in response. In the next moment, more guests stepped forward to present their gifts. Some offered large quantities of food and resources, while there were also others who presented the Baron with rare metals for production. Soon, it was finally House Paxley's turn to offer their gift, and the person who presented their gift was Hershey. Under the curious gazes of the crowd, Hershey gracefully walked towards the Baron, and following behind her was Cassandra, who was holding a wooden box. Hershey bowed to the Baron and said, "I wish you a happy birthday, my lord. I am Hershey Paxley, and I came here to present to you one of the treasured relics of House Paxley." After uttering those words, she gave a cue to Cassandra to reveal what was inside the wooden box. The female knight uncovered the lid, revealing a dark-colored diamond-shaped shield. "Isn't that? No way!" As soon as everyone saw the shield, they were all dumbfounded. "A relic! That's a relic!" someone exclaimed with an agitated look. Even Alaric was surprised by this. This was because a relic wasn't just an ordinary item. Relics are items that could be imbued with mana without breaking. Unlike normal items, Relics can withstand high-intensity mana. Hershey smiled at the Baron. This is one of the 3 treasured relics of House Paxley, the Dark Diamond Shield. From now on, this shield will be yours, my lord. Only someone like you is worthy of wielding this relic. As her words fell, Cassandra put down the box with her head lowered. Insane. They actually gave that relic as a birthday gift. This is probably their way of compensating House Silversword for what happened in Ryvad. Unbelievable. Chapter 104. Interrupted. To end the gift-giving ceremony, I would like to call my son, Alaric, to present the final gift to Lord Lucas. Maria, who acted as the MC of the celebration, announced to the crowd. Her words immediately garnered everyone's attention. Alaric was prepared since he had already been told about the sequence of the ceremony. He calmly walked towards the Baron, under the heated gazes of the audience. Many young women openly expressed their admiration for him as he walked past them, but Alaric only responded with a polite smile. Even so, his casual glance was enough to make these young ladies giggle in excitement. To the enthusiasm of these women, Hershey didn't give much of a reaction. She felt that it was only normal since Alaric was the definition of the perfect man in every girl's dreams. At this moment, Alaric raised his hand, signaling to the crowd to keep quiet. He then cleared his throat and looked at his father with a smile. "My lord." Lucas nodded to him, his lips curving upwards to form a faint smile. "When we went to the Enchanted Woodlands recently, we were lucky enough to stumble upon one of the majestic creatures of that magical forest. My lord, I present to you my gift." Alaric snapped his fingers. In the next moment, Galliner appeared from the entrance of the hall, as if he had been waiting for this cue. Walking obediently beside the elite knight was a majestic brown horse with a silky black mane and a striking white blaze from its forehead down to its muzzle. Its striking appearance and intimidating aura awed the crowd. This is a disaster-grade frost horse, a creature that is native to the Enchanted Woodlands. Alaric gave a short introduction about the horse. Lucas was already aware that Alaric had brought these horses, but he didn't know that one of them was meant for him, and it was also the strongest horse of the bunch. "Thank you for the gift, Alaric. I like this horse a lot." Lucas stood up and rubbed the muscular body of the horse. From his expression, everyone could tell that he was satisfied with this gift. Meanwhile, the audience discussed in whispers after they heard that the horse was actually a disaster-grade monster. Monsters at this level could decimate a small village, and it would take a powerful elite knight to take one down. No one expected that Lucas would receive a creature like this as a gift. Not to mention that it was from his son. They could only look on with envy as the Baron stroked the silky mane of the frost horse. And that was how the gift-giving ceremony ended. What followed was the luxurious banquet, which also served as the perfect time for all the guests to interact with each other. Some people took the opportunity to expand their connections, while some chose to remain low-key, standing discreetly in the corners of the banquet hall. The celebration continued until late in the evening. More than half of the guests left after bidding farewell to the host, while some chose to stay in the estate to rest for the night. Outside the venue, beside the koi pond, 2 figures could be seen walking side by side. "My lord, there is another reason why I volunteered to come here." Hershey glanced at his side profile with a determined look on her face. "I have thought it through. I must confess tonight." Hershey was feeling a mixture of emotions as she looked at Alaric's handsome face. Alaric stopped in his tracks. "Actually, I have been waiting for this moment," he muttered, his voice carrying the regret and guilt of his past life. He turned his head and stared into her eyes. "In this life, I will not hurt you anymore. Hershey." He grabbed her delicate hand, making Hershey's eyes widen in shock, and with a smile filled with tenderness, he asked, "Will you accept me as your man?" Hershey gasped in utter disbelief. She was determined to confess her feelings to him, but Alaric was one step ahead. "Am I dreaming?" She lifted her left hand and pinched her waist. A sharp pain immediately registered, telling her that everything was real. Alaric chuckled at her silly expression, making the young lady embarrassed. Hershey shyly lowered her head. I Just as she was about to respond, the snapping sound of a twig suddenly drifted into their ears. Crack. The two abruptly turned their heads and saw a young woman dressed in servant's attire smiling awkwardly at them. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. Please go on. Just pretend that you didn't see me. Maris, Hershey exclaimed upon seeing her. My lady, I really didn't mean to eavesdrop. I only followed you because I was worried about your safety. Maris nervously glanced at Alaric, afraid that he would blame her for interrupting their moment. Alaric chuckled and shook his head. There's no need to hide Dame Cassandra. I know you're behind that tree. Cassandra cleared her throat as she revealed herself. She then bowed to Alaric and Hershey. We apologize for disturbing your privacy. It's all right. Alaric could only smile bitterly. He was already aware that they had been following them, but he acted like he didn't know. Who would have thought that these two would actually interrupt that perfect opportunity? My lord, it's my fault for not educating them well. Hershey sighed while glaring at the two women. It's not that serious, my lady. It's all right. Alaric forced a smile. This? Hershey awkwardly glanced at him. She didn't know what to do. You don't need to give me a response now, my lady. You should think it through. I'll take my leave first. Please excuse me. Although a bit disappointing, he could only excuse himself. The mood has already been ruined and he didn't want to force the subject. All right. See you tomorrow, my lord. I hope you'll have a good night. Hershey smiled ruefully. You too. Alaric reluctantly left after bidding her farewell. After he was gone, Hershey stood there with her arms akimbo, glaring at the two women with displeasure. You too follow me. Chapter 105. From Steel Sword to Relic. Upon returning to his room, Alaric took a quick bath in his private bathroom and changed into comfortable silk nightwear. It's time to use that thing. Note: item upgrade card will be changed to equipment upgrade card to prevent confusion. Alaric hadn't used the equipment upgrade card which he had gotten recently. He had been thinking which of his equipment he should upgrade and he had finally made a decision. He looked to his left where two swords could be seen neatly placed on a hanging sword holder. He grabbed the sword at the top. This was just an ordinary steel sword before, but it had become something impressive after he used an equipment upgrade card on it. Do you want to use your equipment upgrade card on the selected item? Yes. No. Alaric had been hesitant to use it on this sword since he also wanted to upgrade the other one. However, he was curious about what would happen to the uncommon steel sword if it were upgraded once again. This curiosity drove him to press yes. Congratulations! You have upgraded your uncommon steel sword to rare steel sword. Rare steel sword. Sharpness 20. Durability 20. Unexpectedly, the weight of the sword didn't change. Alaric slowly pulled the sword, revealing a pristine blade. He ran his fingers through the fuller while admiring the blade's appearance. There are more changes to its appearance now. The blade is thicker, but a fuller has been made to reduce its weight. Although it looks bigger than it was before, the weight remains the same. Alaric was satisfied with the sword's new look. He gave it a few swings. Swoosh! Swoosh! Oh! His eyes lit up when he felt almost no resistance as he cut through the air. The balance of the sword was impeccable. It felt perfect in his hand with no awkwardness. He infused mana into the sword, revealing the archaic patterns hidden underneath the blade. This isn't a steel sword anymore, but a relic. He realized that the sword wasn't rejecting his mana. Instead, it was greedily absorbing it. Furthermore, the patterns inscribed on the blade seemed to have awakened the dormant power of the sword. Alaric swung the mana-infused sword. Swoosh! A blade light was released as the sword slashed down. The blade light struck the thick wall with a bang. Bang! Alaric stared at the deep impression on the wall with a look of disbelief. He had only casually swung the mana-infused sword, but it actually left significant damage on the wall. Is this the power of a relic? Excluding the new shield they had gotten from House Paxley, House Silversword only had one relic and it was in his father's possession, so he couldn't tell the difference. I better keep this a secret for now. Alaric put the sword back into its sheath before he carefully placed it on the sword holder. With this sword, can I fight against elite knights? Alaric was tempted to test this, but it was already late in the night, so he decided to postpone the idea. Let's try tomorrow. In the ghetto of a city in the northeast of the empire, a man dressed in rags could be seen leaning against the wall. He was visibly shaking from the cold, but he remained on his spot without moving, as if he was waiting for something. His right hand, which was tightly holding the dagger, hidden underneath his clothes, had already turned stiff. Just when will those guys come out? The man narrowed his eyes as he observed the busy pub across the street. Suddenly, a few more figures appeared behind the man. "My lord, should we head in?" one of them muttered. The man turned his head and glared at the person who had spoken. "Didn't I tell you to call me boss recently?" "I'm sorry, B-boss. I'm still not used to it." "You better get used to it soon if you don't want to be captured along with me." The man snorted. At this moment, his face, which had been hidden in the darkness, was revealed. This man was Liam Paxley, a wanted criminal who had been on the run after escaping the punishment of the sacred duel. Many things had happened to him since he left Ryvad. Together with the warriors sent by his mother, Liam somehow managed to escape. To hide his identity, he decisively carved a few scars on his face, and he even cut his hair short. Now, he had formed a small mercenary group together with his remaining subordinates. They were new to the city, but they had established themselves as a capable group after more than 5 successful operations. However, the most surprising thing was that Liam had already become a knight apprentice. "It's them. They're out," Liam mumbled when he saw their targets coming out of the pub. He made a hand gesture to his subordinates. The target was surrounded by 10 warriors, and one of them was an old knight. On the other hand, Liam's crew only had 6 people, but 2 of them were knights, while the remaining 4 were knight apprentices. Although they were outnumbered, Liam knew that they could pull off the assassination. The old knight who was protecting their target seemed to have sensed that something was wrong. "Enemies, grab your weapons and protect Sir Ben," the old knight shouted as he pulled his sword. Upon hearing his roar, the warriors immediately grabbed their weapons and surrounded their master. At this moment, a series of whistling sounds echoed. "Su! Su! Su!" 3 unlucky warriors were hit by the crossbow bolts, and one of them who was struck to the head died on the spot. The other 2 fell to the ground, screaming in pain. "Don't panic. Hold your positions," the old knight shouted when he saw his men falling into disarray. Just then, he sensed a feeling of extreme danger. His eyes narrowed into slits as he diagonally raised his sword above his head. Clang! The javelin aimed at his head fell after hitting his sword. "Brace yourselves. They are coming." The old man glared in a certain direction. Chapter 106. Evading Death Again. 6 figures emerged from the darkness and rushed towards them. "Protect Sir Ben." The old knight barked at his men as he carefully assessed the enemies. 2 knights and 4 knight apprentices. "I need to stop the 2 knights while my men will take care of the others. One of you will stay and protect Sir Ben. The rest will follow me to eliminate the enemies," the old knight instructed with a grim look. "Yes, sir." In the next moment, the 2 sides clashed. The sounds of their weapons colliding resonated across the streets. Some curious people secretly watched the fight while maintaining a safe distance. In the slums, small-scale battles like this were common, so this scene wasn't new to the residents. Liam's crew showed their superiority in terms of skills. Other than the old knight who managed to hold back 2 of Liam's subordinates, the rest died one after another. "Go and run. I can't hold them back for long," the old knight roared as he pushed back Liam's crew all by himself. Hearing his words, his remaining subordinate immediately carried their master and retreated with haste. Seeing this, the old knight sighed in relief. "You're quite tough, old man. Why don't you join my group? I can pay you decently." Liam smiled at the old knight. The old man ignored him and fought his way out. He even managed to slay one of Liam's subordinates in the process, which made the latter's face turn dark. "Kill him. I want him dead." Liam was furious. The one who died was part of his mother's hidden forces, so his loyalty was unquestionable. Losing him meant he had lost another confidant. Liam's subordinates were also triggered by the death of their comrade. They charged ferociously while swinging their weapons at the old man. Clang! 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 The old knight managed to parry their weapons, but because of his age, his stamina was starting to decline. His breath had become heavier and his arms were starting to lose strength. Not yet. I must kill the two knights to give Sir Ben a chance to escape safely. With a determined look, he infused his remaining mana into his limbs, giving a momentary boost in strength. The sudden increase in his power caught Liam's crew off guard, and another unlucky knight apprentice died after having his neck pierced with a sword. Liam was also injured, and if it weren't for the knights protecting him, his arms would have been chopped off. He winced as the pain registered. While the old man was still occupied by his men, Liam grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it at the latter's face. "HM?" The old knight unconsciously shifted his head. He was able to evade most of the dirt, but some still found their way into his eyes. Liam's subordinates took this opportunity to attack the old man. "You cowardly bastards!" The old knight roared as he forced his eyes open. With a burst of speed, he pounced at Liam, who seemed to be the leader of the group, but the two knights immediately blocked his path. The old man swung his sword, sending one of the knights flying, while the other one took a stab to his shoulder. After dealing with them, he rushed towards Liam and shouted with bloodshot eyes, "D!" He raised his sword and was about to slash it down when he saw Liam pulling out a crossbow from his back. "Su!" The crossbow bolt pierced the old man's chest, making him stagger and fall to his knees. Liam grabbed his sword and approached the old man cautiously. "Old man, many people tried to kill me, but no one succeeded," he muttered in a mocking voice. "You should have accepted my offer." Liam shook his head with disappointment. He then lifted his sword and swung it down hard. Swoosh! Suddenly, the old knight seemed to have regained his strength as he lifted his sword to block Liam's attack. Clang! The alarmed Liam immediately retreated while the old knight chased after him. "Save me, you fools!" Liam barked with a shaking voice, but his subordinates were too far to offer a hand. At that moment, Liam found himself leaning against the wall. The old knight walked towards him, eyeing him coldly with his bloodshot eyes. Just when Liam thought that he would die, the old man suddenly collapsed in front of him. Thud! Liam almost pissed himself. This was the second time he felt the feeling of impending doom. The first one was when Alaric challenged him to a sacred duel. "My boss, are you all right?" He then spat at the old knight's corpse and cursed at him. "What about the target?" Liam raised his head while wiping off the grime on his face. "I already sent our boys to chase them. He only has a knight apprentice protecting him now, so there shouldn't be an issue. We can't be careless. We must kill him tonight." Liam had lost two subordinates in this operation. The two remaining knight apprentices were even injured, including the knights. "Yes, boss." They immediately left the scene afterward. At the outskirts of the enchanted woodlands, 10 robed figures riding horses emerged. Their bodies were obscured by the oversized robes, making it hard for anyone to judge their appearance. "Everyone is ready to depart, Your Highness," one of the robe's figures reported to the one at the forefront. Suddenly, a strong wind blew by, pulling off the hood of the figure at the front, which revealed her beautiful face. Her white hair danced with the wind and her serene eyes stared into the distance as she uttered, "Let's go." Chapter 107. The Trainee's Mission. On the 20th day of January, 3 days after the Baron's birthday celebration, House Silversword welcomed another elite knight under their banner. "Congratulations on your advancement, Sir Arthur." Alaric was genuinely happy for this man. "It's all thanks to you, my lord. If it weren't for you, I might be stuck as a peak knight for a decade more." Arthur muttered emotionally. He was glad that he bent his knee to Alaric that day. It was the best decision he had made in his life. Arthur no longer looked like an old man. He looked as if he had returned to his 40s. This was one of the perks of being an elite knight. Alaric tapped his shoulder. Great timing, Sir Arthur. The newbies will be sent to the Evergreen Forest to eliminate the rampaging monsters that are harassing the travelers and the townspeople. I need an experienced warrior to watch over them during their mission. Do you think you can take care of this task? Alaric stared deeply at him. He had thought of sending Rigger or another knight for this job, but he felt that sending Arthur was a better idea. The latter had been confined in his house for almost a week, so it was a great opportunity for him to breathe some fresh air. Sounds good to me, my lord. I'll take the chance to exercise my bones. Arthur chuckled while flexing his arms. Good. You better get ready. They will leave after breakfast. Alaric reminded him. Yes, my lord. Oh, wait. I almost forgot something. Alaric beckoned to him. Someone will help you with this task, but he is mainly responsible for recording the newbies' performances. Arthur raised an eyebrow. Who is? You'll know later. Alaric waved his hand and laughed lightly. Seeing that he had no intention of telling him, Arthur didn't bother to ask. I understand. Then I'll leave them in your hands. I still have things to settle in Vale, so I'll take my leave first. You guys be careful out there. Alaric tapped the elite knight's arm. You can rest assured, my lord. Be careful on your way to the city. Arthur bowed to him. After Alaric left, Arthur went back to his house to prepare for the trip. Although his task was only to oversee the newbies' mission, he felt that it was necessary to bring his equipment. The Evergreen Forest might be relatively safe, but there still existed some dangerous monsters inside. As soon as he had prepared his equipment, Arthur immediately left to look for the newbies. At this moment, the trainees had already gathered outside the gates of the estate, waiting for the signal to leave. They stood in neat rows, their backs straight like a spear as they respectfully looked at the instructor in front of them. The instructor, a 30-year-old knight with a scar on his upper lip, announced with a stern look. Today is your first practical combat training. Your task is to eliminate the monsters located on the map provided to your group leaders. Each monster you kill will give you a corresponding amount of points, and the points you get will depend on your overall contribution. He told the trainees about the rules of the mission. Everyone listened carefully, afraid to miss a single detail. To them, this practical combat training wasn't just a simple mission, but a chance to prove that they were ready. Among the trainees was Aaliyah. She was the only girl in the group. She had the least experience, but her desire to learn wasn't any less compared to the hot-blooded young men in the group. Lord Alaric has already taught me the basics of swordsmanship. I must use all that I have learned from him to keep up with these guys. She muttered to herself. She was one of the victims of Liam's cruelty, and fate brought her to Alaric. She didn't want to waste the opportunity given to her, and she also wanted to prove to Alaric that she could be a warrior too. While she was immersed in her thoughts, a middle-aged warrior suddenly came out of the gates. The instructor looked visibly surprised to see this man. Are you, Sir Arthur? Arthur nodded at the stunned instructor. I don't recognize you. Can you tell me your name? It's an honor, sir. I'm Owen. I recently became a knight with Lord Alaric's support. The instructor introduced himself. Hearing this, Arthur smiled. So you are one of the warriors nurtured by Lord Alaric. It's a pleasure to meet you. I feel deeply honored, Sir Arthur. By the way, are you the person sent by Lord Alaric to oversee the mission? Owen asked. That's right. Arthur nodded. The two chatted briefly before they went to the topic. Since everyone is here, let's depart. Aaliyah stared at the middle-aged warrior. Sir Arthur looks much younger now. Did he successfully advance? Everyone was aware that Arthur was in the middle of advancing to the elite knight realm. Now that he was here to oversee their mission, this could only mean that he had already advanced. For this mission, 40 trainees were sent, and they were divided into 4 groups, with each group having a group leader. The 4 group leaders were the best in the batch, and Aaliyah even heard that 2 of them were already close to becoming knight apprentices. Her group leader was one of the 2, a man named Rasmus. Now that we're heading to the Evergreen Forest, I'm starting to feel nervous. Aaliyah had never been in a real fight before. She only had sparred with the other trainees and instructors, but other than that, she was a complete novice. Just relax, Aaliyah. A concerned voice drifted into her ears. She turned her head and saw her group leader staring at her. "Mind your own business," she muttered coldly. After her experience with Liam, she developed intense hatred towards the opposite gender. The only exception to this was Alaric and some of the instructors. Rasmus smiled bitterly while shaking his head. Chapter 108, Trouble in the Store. Meanwhile, Alaric was heading to Vale for a surprise visit to his soap shop. He had been busy in the past few weeks, so he left all administrative duties to Vince. At this moment, Alaric was sitting inside the carriage, stroking the fur of the saber-fanged wolf cub. This little guy was one of the 6 cubs they found inside a cave during their trip to Ryvad. Among the 6 cubs, this one was his favorite because it was the most obedient. "My lord, what's its name?" Hershey, who had decided to come with him, asked while staring curiously at the wolf cub. "I haven't decided yet," Alaric responded. She gave a look of disapproval. "That won't do. We should give it a name. It seems like you have already thought of one. All right, let's hear it." Alaric smiled faintly. Hershey nodded her head eagerly. "This looks like a saber-fanged wolf, and they mostly awaken abilities related to water or ice. Why don't we call it Nyx? It means snow in the Elven language." Hearing this, Alaric was surprised. "You know Elven language?" Hershey smiled shyly at his deep gaze. "Yes. I usually read during my free time, and I happen to read some books about the Elven language." "That's cool. You're very talented, Hershey. All I know is how to fight. I can't even manage the territory well like my father does." Alaric sighed while shaking his head. "There's nothing wrong with that, my lord. We all have our areas of expertise. In your case, you have unparalleled talent in swordsmanship that others can only dream of." "Is that so?" Her words made him feel better. "By the way, you can call me by my name when there's no one else around." Hershey shyly lowered her head. "About that, I'll try. There's no need to force yourself. I can wait." Alaric smiled at her. A while later, they finally arrived at the storefront of the soap shop. "We have arrived, my lord, my lady." Galliner's voice drifted into their ears. The two stepped off the carriage and entered the shop. Upon entering, the first thing they noticed was the long line of customers queuing up to buy the scented soaps. Most of them were women, and there were even some noble ladies who came with their servants. "My lord!" Alaric turned his head and saw Josephus approaching him with quick footsteps. After Charles's death, this guy's complexion seemed to have improved. He looked more cheerful now than when his father was still alive. "How's your job here? Do you find it boring? I can send someone to replace you if you want." Alaric tapped the man's shoulder. "No, please. I like it here." Surprisingly, Josephus shook his head. "I can interact with a lot of new people when I'm here," he explained. "I see. If that's what you want." Alaric was glad to see him in better spirits. "It seems like Charles was the reason for his suicide in my past life, but I still need to investigate this more deeply. He is Charles's son after all." "My lady." Josephus bowed to Hershey when he saw her behind Alaric. Hershey smiled and curtsied in response. "Has there been any trouble here lately?" Alaric asked. Josephus rubbed his chin and replied, "Sir Anthony has been sending some warriors to help us keep watch over the shop, so there hasn't been any trouble recently. However, there was a situation yesterday." He scratched his head and hesitated. "Tell me." Alaric stared at him inquisitively. "Actually, someone came here to ask if he could buy the store." Sir Vince was furious and chased the man out, but he said that he would come back after reporting to his lord. Alaric frowned upon hearing this. "So they are starting to realize the value of the scented soap. It looks like I need to send more people to guard the store." He could already smell the trouble that was coming. "I need to ensure the safety of the children. Who should I send here?" At this moment, he suddenly thought of one particular person. Fredrin. The guy had nothing to do at the estate since Alaric hadn't given him a task. Thinking about this, he tapped Josephus's shoulder and said, "Don't worry. I'll send someone trustworthy to protect the store. Let's talk later. I need to speak with Vince. And can you hold this guy for me?" Alaric handed the wolf cub to him and headed to the production room with Hershey without waiting for Josephus's response. So the famous scented soap came from this store. Hershey mumbled. Oh, I didn't know our scented soap had already reached Rivad. Alaric chuckled. There are only a few boxes that arrived in Rivad, and they are mostly sold by passing merchants. The ladies in Rivad are crazy about them. She remarked with a light laugh. I can send you a few boxes enough for your daily use. Really? Of course. Then I will gladly accept them. Hershey eagerly replied. Soon, they arrived at the production room where the soaps were being made. The facility has already been upgraded, so the children didn't have a lot to do. They are mostly responsible for checking the defective products and throwing them to be recycled. Vince also hired some adults to help with the packaging. At this moment, Vince was busy helping with the packaging, so he didn't notice Alaric's arrival. My lord! Lord Alaric! Some children noticed him, and it was only then that Vince discovered his presence. The man looked a lot healthier than before, and the bags under his eyes had mostly disappeared. However, his hair was a mess, and it seemed like he still hadn't changed his bathing habits. Vince grinned at him. My lord! Vince, you look much better now, but I think you should take care of your image too. You're a manager now. It's important for you to look presentable in front of our guests. Alaric reminded him with a bitter look. Yes, my lord, Vince replied with a disinterested look. Never mind. Can you tell me about what happened yesterday? I heard that there was a situation. Alaric inquired about the matter he heard from Josephus. Oh, about that? I asked around and I discovered something interesting. Vince moved closer to him and whispered. It turns out that person was sent by a noble from one of the main cities in the central parts of the empire. Hearing this, Alaric's face turned grim. Chapter 109 Ruse. This wasn't a minor matter anymore, and Alaric had a feeling that there was more to this than just a business dispute. There was something fishy about it, since the act was done so deliberately, as if their goal wasn't the soap business but something else. Alaric pondered deeply, but he failed to understand the reasoning behind their actions. Inform Sir William about this. I will go back to the estate and send more people here. Alaric muttered in a serious voice. I understand, my lord. Vince nodded. For now, just continue the production as usual, but you must be careful about strange individuals. If you discover something unusual, inform the warriors immediately. Alaric reminded him. Yes, my lord. Vince revealed an uncharacteristic display of seriousness. Alaric left the production room with a grave look, while Hershey followed him in silence. My lord, are you going back to the estate? Josephus approached him upon seeing them coming out of the production room. Alaric nodded. Yes, I need to make some preparations in case those people will come back to cause trouble here. He tapped Josephus's shoulder and took the wolf cub from him as he added. Report to me immediately if there's something you guys can't handle. Yes, my lord. Josephus saluted. After bidding everyone farewell, Alaric and Hershey left the store and entered their carriage. Looking at Alaric's expression, Hershey spoke with a concerned tone. I think this is just a ruse. Hearing this, Alaric stared at her in surprise. You think so too? Hershey nodded. If they are truly interested in your business, they would have approached you instead of thoughtlessly provoking the store's personnel. With a hesitant look, she asked, Have you offended someone lately? Alaric took a deep breath. He already had an answer in his mind, but he didn't want to scare her. Other than your missing brother, I can't think of anyone, he replied while shaking his head. Hershey became silent when he mentioned this. Alaric realized his mistake and apologized immediately. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring him up. It's all right. Liam is a criminal and deserves to be punished. We are also doing our best to search for his whereabouts. If there's any news, I will inform you right away. Hershey wanted nothing more than to capture Liam. He didn't want him to continue ruining their family's reputation. Thank you, Hershey. Please convey my thanks to Lord Nathan and Lord Theo. When I have time, I will visit them and properly convey my gratitude. Alaric could feel House Paxley's sincerity in repairing the relationship between their households. I will convey your message to them once I return home. Hershey smiled faintly. Meanwhile, within the evergreen forest, The warriors in training had already started their operation to eliminate the rampaging wild beasts and monsters. At this moment, Rasmus was leading his team to fight against an iron-headed warthog that was close to becoming a fatal-grade monster. This monster looked like a typical warthog except for the thick iron pads on their faces which they used to repel predators. Additionally, they were also bigger and more agile. Although this iron-headed warthog wasn't a full-fledged fatal-grade monster, it already had traces of mana in its body, making it sturdier and stronger compared to average wild beasts. "Surround it and don't let it escape," Rasmus instructed his teammates as he rushed forward. The beast was furious because they had stepped into its territory. It emitted a low grunt and charged at Rasmus, who was leading his team. Seeing the beast coming his way, Rasmus raised his shield and braced himself for the impact. "Stab it as I hold it back," he shouted as he tightened his muscles and held his breath in preparation for the collision. "Yes, sir," his teammates responded in unison. In the next moment, the warthog smashed into Rasmus's shield. Bang! Rasmus grunted in pain, but he bore through the impact by gritting his teeth. He planted his foot firmly into the ground, refusing to let the beast push him back. "Now!" he shouted, his face contorting with pain. Upon hearing his command, his teammates immediately stabbed the warthog's body, but most of them failed to even penetrate its tough skin. Only a few managed to wound the creature. However, it wasn't enough to take it down. The beast was furious after having been attacked. It snorted and wildly lunged at the warriors who surrounded it, sending them crashing into the ground. Just as it was about to escape, Aaliyah suddenly threw a rope which caught its legs, making it fall awkwardly. Aaliyah couldn't hold on to the rope and was pulled by its immense force and weight. Seeing that the creature had fallen, Rasmus took the opportunity and thrust his sword into its underbelly. Poochie! His sword cleanly penetrated the thick skin of the warthog before cutting through its internal organs. Squeal! The beast squealed in pain and tried to run away, but Rasmus wrestled with it and repeatedly stabbed his sword into its body. His teammates also jumped in to help him hold the creature. Soon, the iron-headed warthog finally stopped moving. Rasmus pulled out his sword from its body while breathing heavily. His left shoulder was still feeling numb from that collision with the warthog, but he had to maintain his prestige as the leader of the team, so he acted like it was nothing. "Good job, everyone," he said to the group. He was happy with his teammates' performance. Although they weren't able to bring out their best, he was satisfied nonetheless. "Are you all right, sir? Why don't we get some rest before we continue heading deeper?" someone suggested. Rasmus shook his head. "We can't. If we stay here, the other groups will be ahead of us." Everyone became silent at his words. Seeing them in low spirits, he immediately said, "I understand that you are nervous, but we have to persist. How can we fight alongside Lord Alaric if we can't even handle some wild beasts?" His words ignited everyone's morale. Chapter 110, Maria's Foresight. An hour later, Alaric returned to the estate and immediately reported the situation to his parents. "I'm planning to send an elite knight to keep watch at the store. What do you think, Dad?" There was no one else around, so he didn't bother to use honorifics. The Baron leaned on his seat and rubbed his chin while looking at him. "Who are you sending there this time? You just recalled Galliner, so it would be unfair for him if you send him again." Alaric shook his head and replied, "I will be sending that person to the store." Hearing this, the Baron thought of the man he had brought recently. According to his subordinates, Alaric brought back an elite knight from his recent trip. He had forgotten about this since he had been busy the whole week. Now that Alaric had mentioned it, he finally remembered the matter. "Can you bring him to me first? I'd like to speak with this man." Lucas didn't want to intervene in his son's matters, but the situation this time was different, so he wanted to be careful. Alaric nodded. "I understand. I will bring him here." He immediately left the study room and sent someone to look for Fredrin. About 20 minutes later, Alaric returned to the study room with Fredrin. "Greetings, my lord, my lady." Fredrin cupped his fists at the Baron and Maria. Maria smiled at him, while Lucas nodded calmly. "Please take your seat." The Baron pointed at the seat in front of his desk. Thank you. Fredrin was a bit nervous. He knew that Lucas was a powerful warrior, someone who had etched his name on the Estanian dragon leaderboard. As if sensing his anxiety, the Baron smiled faintly. You don't need to be nervous. I just want to see the person that Alaric brought back from his trip. Fredrin squeezed out a smile. The Baron asked him a few more questions, but the things he asked were mostly about Fredrin's situation and personal experiences. Fredrin had nothing to hide, and he answered everything honestly. Lucas didn't sense any deception in his words, so his face relaxed. Alaric is so lucky to find someone like Fredrin. Charles's death caused a severe impact on House Silversword's military strength, but because of the growth of Alaric's forces, this somehow filled the gaps in their ranks. Fredrin's arrival in particular was a huge boost to their military strength, not to mention the advancement of Arthur and the emergence of new knights like Owen. Son, I feel that this matter isn't just about the soap business. Are you hiding something from us? Maria was sharp enough to notice the deeper details in his report. Alaric's face hardened. He knew that he couldn't hide it from his parents anymore. He took a deep breath and said, My lord, my lady, I think the two princes are already preparing for the battle for the throne. Lucas frowned, while Maria raised an eyebrow. How is this related to the situation in your store? Maria asked. Alaric adjusted his sitting posture and responded with a serious look. Before Uncle was beheaded, he mentioned something about. He told them what Charles said before he was executed. Are you saying that your uncle might have been approached by one of the princes? Lucas's face darkened upon hearing this. Alaric nodded. That's right, but I don't know which one he had sided with. I see. If that's true, then everything makes sense now. Maria mumbled, her countenance turning cold. I think the people behind Charles are deliberately provoking us. This must be their way of checking if we are already affiliated with someone. If my guess is right, someone will visit us soon and ask us to join their side. What will happen if we reject them? Lucas asked. Maria pondered for a moment before she opened her mouth. It depends on what kind of person we are dealing with. They might give us a warning or they might eliminate us since we are a threat to their cause. The Baron rubbed his temples, feeling vexed because of the situation. What should we do? Alaric's plan was to join the Crown Prince's side again. He knew which people would take his side, so he had some room to maneuver if it really came to that. Maria crossed her arms as she responded. We could join one of the princes, or we could establish a neutral side and invite like-minded people to join us. The former could save us from this predicament, but we need to carefully consider which side to support. As for the latter, it carries greater risk since we might offend both princes by choosing neither of them. Furthermore, we would need to find more allies who will take our side. Both choices have their advantages and disadvantages, but I think the best option for us is to remain neutral. If you want access to fast updates or the full novel in high-quality audio, contact me now and buy. I offer over 300 complete audiobooks from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, and more. No locked episodes, no subscriptions, just one-time payment via PayPal or Ko-fi. Message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out the full list of available novels on Discord. Start listening to your next favorite audiobook today.